She never showed up for our date. I know why now. I was supposed to go on a date. Emily. We'd been texting for a couple weeks. Flirty, fun, stupid little inside jokes that made me feel good in a way I hadn't in a long time. She even called me cute. Said she liked quiet guys. We made plans for Friday night. I shaved. Actually ironed a shirt. Even cleaned the inside of my car. Just in case we drove somewhere after. But when I texted her that afternoon to confirm, nothing came back. No response. Hours passed. Still nothing. I tried not to spiral. Maybe something came up. Maybe she lost her phone. Maybe I was just ghosted again. Happens. Still, I kept checking. Over and over. Like an idiot. With the evening suddenly free and nowhere to be. I figured I'd finally crawl into the attic and check the water damage above the kitchen. It had been on my to-do list for weeks, and I needed something to do. Something to feel useful. The attic was cramped, filled with old boxes and that pink cotton insulation that always makes your skin itch. I aimed my flashlight at the far end, near the exterior wall. That's when I noticed it. A section of drywall that didn't belong. It was subtle, cheaper than the rest, slightly cleaner. No seams, no screws. Just a slab of board sealed with cracked, yellowed caulk. I don't know why, but I started cutting it open. Something in me went still. Not curious, not anxious. Just quiet. Autopilot. The blade of my box cutter slipped in easy, like the wall wanted to open. A few slices, some pressure, and the board shifted inward with a soft crack. Cold air pushed out. Behind it was a hidden room. No windows, no furniture. Just a low ceiling, raw beams, and a bare bulb dangling from a wire. It trembled in the draft I'd let in. The smell hit first. Rot. Piss. Copper. The kind of stink that clings to wood, seeps into the grain, and never leaves. A smell that knows. The floor was warped and stained, dark patches across the boards. Deep gouges in the planks, like someone had clawed them raw. Blood, long dried, had soaked into the slats and left them black and swollen. In the middle of the room sat a mattress. Foam. Yellowed. Soaked through. No sheets, no blanket. Just filth and restraints. Bolted into the floor joists. Position low. Fixed wide apart. Exactly where a person's limbs would go if they were bent over on all fours. Like some sick kennel setup. Exposed. Vulnerable. At first, I figured it was some redneck sex dungeon left behind by the previous owner. Maybe a place to film kink videos or do meth, or whatever kind of shit gets tucked away and forgotten in these old houses. I even laughed. That weird, off-key kind of laugh that means you're unsettled but pretending not to be. But I couldn't sleep that night. Not a second. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the scratches, the warped floor, the way the bulb had swayed as if something had just been there. So the next morning, I went back up, told myself it was curiosity. Maybe even closure. Like, if I looked one more time, I'd be able to laugh it off for real and move on. I crouched beside the mattress, ran a finger along the edge. Something sharp caught my skin. I lifted the corner, peeled it back, and found it. A silver chain, thin, smudged with blood. The pendant on the end was small, oval, almost elegant. I turned it over in my palm. And there it was, in delicate, curling cursive. Emily. My brain blanked. My heart stopped. And then it came back. One memory at a time, like knives being pulled out slow, dull, serrated. I drilled the restraints myself, took measurements, even knelt on the floor and mapped it out with masking tape to make sure her arms and legs would stretch just right. Bent. Obedient. No room to shift. No chance to run. I told her it was a date, lit a candle, smiled when she looked confused, set a paper plate down with half a sandwich and a dog bowl full of water. She screamed when I called her baby, cried when I told her she was special, that no one else ever made me feel seen. I remember the belt. I folded it slow, ran it between my hands like a priest threading rosary beads. When I struck her, it wasn't rage. It was careful, measured. I let the leather kiss the insides of her thighs first, the softest skin, watched her flinch, watched the pink rise. She clenched her fists, bit her lip. Wouldn't make a sound. I started whispering between each blow. Told her how much I loved her. How close I felt when she cried. I made her hold eye contact. I made her say thank you. The belt welts layered like heat maps. Red, then purple, then open. I licked one once, just to see her shudder. When she sagged forward, I pulled her back up by the hair and reminded her that love isn't supposed to feel safe. It's supposed to burn. When she stopped calling me sweetheart, I held her hand like I was about to propose. I kissed her palm, told her she had pianist fingers. Then I broke them, one by one. Thumb first. A hard, fast bend. Snap. Index. Slower. I watched the tendons stretch like taffy before they popped. Middle. That one fought. I had to brace her hand against the floor and lean in until the bone gave with a wet little crunch. She screamed until her throat gave out. I didn't stop. I kissed the bruises as they swelled. When she pissed herself, I didn't even speak. Just grabbed her by the ankle and dragged her to the corner, cleaned her with a rag and cold water. Not out of kindness. I just couldn't stand her smelling like anything but me. She wasn't allowed to speak unless it was to say she loved me. I made her say it again and again until her voice cracked and the words sounded like vomit. I told her it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. One night, she stopped reacting. Didn't flinch when I unbuckled my belt. Didn't cry when I touched her. Didn't beg. Just stared at me, like I wasn't there anymore. So I picked up the hammer. The first blow cracked her teeth. The second shattered her jaw. The third buried itself in her temple and stuck. I had to pry it out like a nail. She twitched, made a sound, wet, bubbling. Her eyes rolled back, but never closed. I watched her die for 7 minutes. Didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. I wrapped her in a tarp, pulled her to the old ductwork behind the wall. I remember how soft she felt, how warm. Her blood soaked into my shirt. I didn't change it for 3 days. Then I sealed it, screwed the board in, caulked the edges, buried her in insulation, layer by layer. I cleaned the mattress, replaced the bucket, swept the floor, and forgot. I made myself forget, went to work, ate dinner, slept in the room just beneath her corpse like nothing had ever happened. I even dated again. Told people I'd been ghosted once, and it really messed with me. But the house remembered. The stink, the rot in the beams, the cold spot that never left. The walls knew. And now, so do I.
I see weird things as a railway worker in the Australian outback. This is the worst one. I work as an engineer on a maintenance crew servicing the outback freight lines, the ones that go for hundreds of kilometres without a bend or a stoplight. Just dust, heat and rusted rails all the way from nowhere to nowhere else. Last month I was riding in the rear carriage of a 4-car supply train headed east out of Rawlinna. It was the kind of run you do half asleep, no traffic, no passengers, just endless red landscape. We'd loaded up in Kalgoorlie and were making good time. But around midnight, somewhere near the salt pans, the radio crackled with something weird. "Rear eyes up, you've got something pacing you." It was Greg, the lead up front. I laughed, thinking he was just messing around. "There's nothing out here but ruse and wind." "What is it?" I joked. "A ghost camel?" No answer, just static. Then I heard it. A thudding noise, faint at first. Thought it was just the wheels hitting a bad section of track. But it didn't match the rhythm. It was irregular, heavy, too heavy. I stepped out onto the rear platform, flicked on my utility torch, and pointed it backward along the track. And I saw it. About 200 meters behind the train, something was running alongside the tracks. Too fast, too smooth. It had the shape of a man, but the proportions were wrong. Long arms, elongated neck. Its skin looked like dried bark, cracking and splitting as it sprinted on all fours. Every so often it would stand upright, like it was checking how far behind we were. Its face wasn't a face, just a flat white disc with 2 vertical slits. No eyes, no mouth. But it knew I was watching. The train wasn't going slow. We were pushing 90 kph, and this thing was keeping pace. Sometimes it veered off, disappearing behind shrubs and scrub. Then it had come back, closer. I radioed the front again. "What the hell is that? You see it?" Greg came back a few seconds later, voice low. "Don't look at it, don't acknowledge it, just keep moving." That wasn't a joke. He sounded like he was holding back panic. The thing followed us for over an hour. Every so often it would slam into the side of the train, not enough to derail us, but enough to shake the metal. I heard something clawing at the back access door once. When I checked, there were deep gouges in the steel. It didn't want to board. It wanted to scare us, like it was playing. When we passed through a shallow cutting lined with sheer rock, the creature stopped, just froze, standing there like a scarecrow. We left it behind. Or I thought we did. 2 days later, Greg quit, didn't even file paperwork, just got off the train in Port Augusta and vanished. Wouldn't answer calls, wouldn't explain. I got curious. I started digging. Old reports, railway folklore, stories from the early track layers. Apparently there's an old Anangu legend about something called the Min Min Kalti, a spirit that lives in the desert flats. It doesn't attack right away, it follows you, watches, waits. If you run, it runs. If you stop, it gets closer. Some say it's a punishment spirit, some say it's just lonely. But one thing's consistent, it only shows up to people who've seen death on the tracks. I've worked 12 years on that line. I've seen more than a few things I can't unsee. And now, every time I'm on a train alone, I can't help but glance out the rear window, just to check. And sometimes I see dust and footprints, and it's closer than it was before. Mr. Polite, I've heard a saying that the scariest people are the ones who never raise their voice. If that's true, then Mr. Polite is the scariest man I've ever met. I work the night shift at a small family-owned diner off Route 57. It's one of those places that hasn't changed in decades, the kind with faded booths, flickering neon signs, and a jukebox that only works when you kick it. We don't get many customers after 2 a.m. Usually it's truckers, drunks, or the occasional insomniac. So when I saw him walk in at 3:17 a.m., exactly tall, thin, wearing a perfectly pressed black suit, he stood out. Not just because of the clothes, but because of how he moved. Slow, deliberate steps, like he was measuring the distance between each one. And the smile, God, the smile. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't even forced. It was empty. Like he'd learned how to move his lips without letting the expression reach his eyes. He sat down at the far end of the counter. I went over, grabbed my pad. "What can I get you?" I asked. He tilted his head slightly, as if weighing the question. Then, in the calmest, most even voice I've ever heard, he said,
"A cup of coffee, please, black, if it's not too much trouble."
The words were fine, the tone was fine, but there was something in the pause before please that made my skin prickle. I poured him a cup. He watched every movement, his eyes following my hands. When I set it in front of him, he smiled again.
"You've been very kind. Not everyone is kind, you know. Some people are careless."
I mumbled something about just doing my job. He didn't look away. The first weird thing happened when he took out his wallet. He slid a 20 across the counter, even though the coffee was only $2. But before I could grab it, he placed his hand over mine, cold, so cold it made me flinch. Cold it made me...
"I insist you keep the change. I'm told it's polite to tip generously."
I forced a smile and thanked him. He just stared at me like he was studying how my face moved. He stayed for almost an hour, didn't drink much of the coffee, didn't check a phone, didn't even glance around the diner. He just watched me, not in a leering way. There was no lust or warmth in his expression. It was more like he was waiting for something. When he finally stood, he buttoned his jacket and said,
"You're very pleasant. I hope we speak again."
And then he left. I thought that was it. Just a creepy late-night customer I'd forget about in a week. But the next night, at exactly 3:17 a.m., he came back. Same suit, same seat, same order. This time he asked questions. Where did I live? Did I have a family? Was I in school? Harmless enough on the surface, but the way he asked made it feel like a test. Like if I gave the wrong answer, something bad would happen. I lied about everything. Told him I lived with roommates, that my parents were nearby, that I had a boyfriend who picked me up after work. He nodded slowly, like he could see straight through me.
"It's good to be accounted for. People notice when you disappear."
On the third night, he brought something. A single red rose wrapped in white tissue paper. "For you. It's polite to bring a gift." I didn't want to touch it, but refusing felt dangerous. So I took it, forced another thank you, and stuck it in an empty glass behind the counter. He smiled wider this time. His teeth were perfectly straight, perfectly white, like they'd never bitten into anything solid in his life. After that, he came every night, always at 3:17, always polite, always watching. It started getting under my skin. I'd dream about him standing at the end of my bed, smiling that thin, empty smile. And sometimes I'd wake up convinced I'd heard his voice, soft, polite, whispering in the dark. "May I come in?" One night I asked him why he always came so late. His expression didn't change.
This is the hour when people are least protected.
I laughed nervously. "Protected from what?" I told my boss about him. She brushed it off, said some customers are just eccentric, so I tried to ignore him, until the night I noticed his hands. They weren't the hands of a man who worked in an office. The skin was pale, almost translucent, the fingers long, too long, like they'd been stretched, and under the nails, black, not dirt, something thicker, dried. A week later, one of the regulars, a trucker named Paul, went missing. Last seen leaving the diner after his shift. The police came by asking questions. Mr. Polite sat at the counter while they were there, sipping his coffee, smiling faintly. When one of the officers asked if he'd seen anything suspicious, he said, "Suspicion is impolite, but I hope you find your friend." And then he looked right at me. The smile didn't change, but I swear I saw the tiniest flicker of amusement in his eyes. Last night was the worst. It was dead quiet. No customers, no traffic outside. At 3:17, the bell over the door didn't ring, but when I turned around, he was already sitting at the counter. No footsteps, no sound. Just there. He leaned forward.
I believe it's time we spoke somewhere more private.
I told him I wasn't comfortable with that. He tilted his head, as if I'd forgotten my manners.
It would be impolite to refuse me.
I'm writing this from the diner office. He's still out there, just sitting, smiling. Every so often he looks at the office door, not knocking, not calling out, just waiting. I don't think I'll make it to sunrise, because the truth is, the longer I sit here, the more a part of me feels like it would be rude to keep him waiting. The reflection I see in the gym mirror is stronger and more muscular than I am. The problem is, he's getting stronger while I'm getting weaker. I'm writing this from my living room couch, where I've been for the last 2 days. The door to my bathroom is closed, and I've hung a towel over the knob. I know it's stupid, it won't do anything, but it's the only thing I can think of to do. I'm afraid to go in there. I'm afraid to look in the mirror, because I know who I'll see, and it won't be me. Not the real me, anyway. This all started about 6 months ago. I was, for lack of a better word, average. Average height, average build, working an average desk job. That was slowly but surely turning my spine into a question mark. I wasn't unhappy, just static. I decided I needed a change, so I joined a gym. It was one of those 24/7 places, nothing fancy. It had that familiar specific smell of rubber mats, disinfectant, and faint metallic sweat. The equipment was a bit old, the lighting a bit harsh, but it had everything you needed. I wasn't trying to become a bodybuilder. I just wanted to feel a little healthier, a little stronger. My routine was simple. I'd go twice a week after work. I'd do my workout, listen to my podcasts, maybe have a brief head-nodding conversation with one of the regulars. And at the end of every session, I'd do what every single person who has ever lifted a weight does. I'd stand in front of the giant, wall-sized mirror and check my progress. It's a little vain, I know, but it's part of the ritual. You flex, you turn, you see the small changes. A little more definition in the shoulders, a bit more shape to your arms. It's a quiet moment of self-congratulation before you head home. The first time I noticed something was off, I dismissed it instantly. I'd just finished a tough workout, and I was standing in front of the mirror catching my breath. And I thought, the lighting in here is really good. I looked better, not just pumped from the workout, but fuller. My shoulders seemed broader, my chest thicker. It was a subtle difference, the kind you could easily attribute to a flattering angle or a trick of the light. I felt a small thrill of satisfaction, took a quick picture with my phone to compare later, and went home. Back in my apartment, I checked the picture, then looked in my own bathroom mirror. The effect was gone. In the harsh overhead light of my bathroom, I just looked like me again. Tired, a little flushed from the workout, but decidedly average. The impressive figure from the gym mirror was gone. Must be the lighting, I muttered to myself, and forgot about it. A week later, I was back at the gym. I finished my routine and went to the mirror for the ritual. And there he was again, the better me. But this time, the difference was more pronounced. It wasn't just lighting. The reflection staring back at me was genuinely more muscular. The lines of his abdomen were deeper. The curve of his bicep was sharper. He looked like me, but like a version of me that had been working out consistently for a year, not just a few weeks. A cold, strange feeling prickled at the back of my neck, but it was quickly washed away by a wave of pride. Whatever was happening, it was working. I was making progress. This is where the obsession began. The image in that mirror became my motivation. It was a promise of what I could become. I started going to the gym 3 times a week, then 4. Soon I was there every single day, chasing the man in the mirror. I'd push myself to the absolute limit, my muscles screaming, my lungs burning, all for that final moment of validation when I'd stand before the mirror and see him. And every time he was better, stronger, more defined. He was becoming a work of art, a Greek statue carved from my flesh and by my hands, but a strange, terrifying disconnect started to happen. While the reflection was getting stronger, I was getting weaker. At first, I told myself it was just overtraining. Of course I was tired. I was at the gym 7 days a week. But it was more than that. It was a deep, draining fatigue that settled into my bones. The weights I used to lift with ease started to feel impossibly heavy. I'd find myself getting out of breath just walking up the stairs to my apartment. I was eating more, trying to fuel the workouts, but I was losing weight. My clothes started to hang off my frame. I looked pale, gaunt. As the days passed, the contrast became more horrifying. I would struggle through a workout, feeling weaker than I had the day before. I'd stumble to the mirror, feeling frail and depleted, and the man looking back at me would be a titan. His skin would be tanned and vibrant, his muscles full and rippling with power. He looked like he was bursting with vitality, my vitality. One of the regulars, an older guy who was always there, caught me by the water sink one day.
"Hey, kid," he said, his friendly face creased with genuine concern. "You okay? No offense, but you look like hell. You're in here every day, but you're getting smaller."
"Just been working a lot," I lied, my voice sounding thin even to me. "Not getting much sleep."
"Well, be careful," he said, clapping me on my bony shoulder. "Listen to your body. You look like you're running on fumes."
I knew he was right, but I couldn't stop. I was an addict. I felt like I am using the gym as drug just to get high when I look at the mirror. I needed to see him. I needed to see the man I was supposed to be, even as the real me was fading away. The reflection started to change in other ways, too. It wasn't just a passive image anymore. One night, I was staring at it, at him, and I saw him smirk, a small, confident, almost arrogant curl of his lips. It was my face, but it was not my expression. I felt a jolt of pure terror. I stumbled back from the mirror, my heart pounding. It was aware. It knew. The breaking point happened 2 weeks ago. I was trying to bench press a weight that had been my easy warm-up set just a month prior. I lowered the bar to my chest, and I couldn't push it back up. It was stuck, pinned. My arms were trembling, devoid of all strength. I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. I had to shamefully tilt the bar to one side, letting the weights crash to the floor with a deafening clang. The entire gym went quiet. Everyone was staring. Humiliation washed over me, hot and sickening. I scrambled up and stumbled towards the locker room, avoiding everyone's eyes. But I couldn't resist one last look in the mirror. I looked like a ghost, a pale, skeletal figure with hollow eyes and sunken cheeks. But my reflection, he had never looked more powerful. He was posed, one arm flexed, a picture of perfect, radiant health. He was glowing with stolen energy. He looked at my pathetic real form, and his eyes were filled with a cold, triumphant contempt. And I finally accepted the truth. It wasn't just a reflection, it was a parasite, and it was feeding on me. I went home and cancelled my gym membership that night. The first few days were hell. My body ached with a profound weakness, but worse than that was the psychological withdrawal. I felt a desperate, gnawing urge to go back, to see him again, to see how much stronger he had gotten. For 2 weeks, I didn't go near the gym. I started eating more, trying to rest. The deep fatigue began to lift, just slightly. I still felt weak, but I wasn't getting any worse. A tiny, fragile seed of hope began to sprout in my chest. Maybe it was over. Maybe, without me there to power it, the reflection had just faded away. 2 days ago, I went into the bathroom to brush my teeth. I stood in front of the sink, and I looked up normally as I brush. It was a normal morning routine as always. But something was wrong. At first I saw me. The real me. Still too thin, still too pale, but me. I smiled. I made a genuine, relieved smile. And my reflection didn't. It just stood there, its expression unchanged. And then slowly, deliberately, it changed. The gaunt, tired features of my own face began to fill out. The shoulders in the mirror broadened. The chest thickened. The pale skin gained a healthy, vibrant glow. In the space of 5 seconds, I watched in silent, frozen horror as my own weak, tired reflection transformed into the magnificent, powerful creature from the gym mirror. He was here, in my house, in my mirror. He had followed me. He looked at me, his eyes filled with that same cold, triumphant confidence, and then he smiled. It was a wide, predatory, possessive smile. It was the smile of a victor who had finally escaped his prison bars. It was the smile of a parasite that had found its way into the host's heart. I don't remember screaming. I just remember the feeling of my legs giving out, of crashing to the floor, of scrambling backwards out of the bathroom like a terrified animal. I slammed the door shut, and I haven't opened it since. I'm trapped in my own home. My own reflection, a stronger, better version of me, is waiting for me in there. Has it taken over every reflection? If I look at my dark phone screen, will I see his face instead of mine? If I look into a puddle on the street, will he be looking back up? He's not just feeding on me anymore, he's replacing me. And I don't know what happens when he's finished. Will I just fade away completely? Will he be able to step out of the mirror and take my place? No one would ever know. He looks more like the man I was supposed to be than I do. So I'm asking you, anyone, what do I do? How do you fight your own reflection? Please help me. I can feel myself getting weaker just sitting here, and I can almost hear him on the other side of that door, humming like he wants to whisper.